Though Marvel have unquestionably popularized the post-credits scene in contemporary cinema, it's actually been a thing, albeit a far less frequent thing, for decades now. And so we sit, now bum completely numbed by a lengthy film, fingers wrapped around our coats as an expensive and possibly toxic hot dog dissolves in our bellies, waiting for that sweet post-credits release. Now arguably, they can be some of the most enjoyable parts of the cinematic experience, little addendum pieces that don't need to be plot-heavy and can be a way for the film to blow off steam, but sometimes these little tidbits really do leave a sour taste in our mouths. After all, who would want to wait around for something that isn't worth it? These are lame post-credit scenes everyone regrets waiting for. Blade driving? Blade Trinity. Have you ever watched Blade and thought to yourself, gosh, howdy gee whiz, I sure would like to see Wesley Snipes drive somewhere? No? Oh, well, don't go bother waiting around for the end of Blade Trinity, as that's exactly what happens in this 10-second two-shot clip. I mean, yeah, you get to see that Blade was okay after his scrap, but we all knew that anyway. What is weird though is how utterly boring this reveal was. I mean, why not have him appear at the end to slay some new beast, or even just show him undercover working a new case? It's just one of those scenes that's so uninteresting that I walked away more annoyed than if I'd just seen nothing at all. So thanks for that. Plus the credits took a full 8 minutes to get through, so that 10-second teaser felt less like the love bite we wanted and more like a little nibble. Boo.
Tails joins the party, Sonic the Hedgehog. Back when the Sonic the Hedgehog movie was first announced, many fans were left wondering why Sonic's beloved sidekick Miles Prower, aka Tails, was conspicuously absent. And so, given that basically every blockbuster movie hoping for its own franchise is duty-bound to feature a sequel-baiting credit scene, it seemed like a 99.8% certainty that Tails would make an appearance this way. And that's precisely what happened. In the middle of the credits, a ring portal opens on Earth, and Sonic's trusty orange pal leaps out, before announcing that they've finally tracked down Sonic and flying off to meet him.
Deadpool lives. X-Men Origins Wolverine. I'm sorry, are you telling me people actually stuck around until the end of this film at all, and waited beyond this point of excruciation to find out if it had a post-credits sequence? Well, I'm not calling you a liar, but you definitely are one. All kidding aside, yes, there was a post-credit sequence after the worst X-Men movie ever made dropped, and it was utterly dumb and cliche. So after the climactic fight between Sabretooth, Wolverine, and what this film tells us is Deadpool, we see the severed head of Ryan Reynolds suddenly come back to life before cutting to black and a low shh noise being made. Okay, while this does fit with the mythos of Deadpool and his insane regenerative powers, the delivery was as hammy as the acting. And because this film bombed hard, it meant that Pool's shh was silent for many, many years after. Now, thankfully, we all know how the story turned out, but this version of the Merc without a mouth should have just stayed dead. Also, side note, how did it shush us without a mouth to do so? Absolutely bollocks. Tell you what, give me that amnesia bullet, mate, as I want to forget this.
Adrian Toomes' cameo, Morbius. Morbius' very first trailer, released back in the halcyon days of January 2020, immediately confirmed that Michael Keaton would appear in the film as Adrian Toomes, aka Vulture, the very same villain he played in Spider-Man: Homecoming. The notion of the MCU Spider-Man movies intermingling with full-on Sony-produced Spider-Man adjacent properties like Morbius and Venom was certainly exciting. Though as it turns out, Keaton's role in the former was significantly retooled during post-production. Following the release of Spider-Man: No Way Home, his part had to be reshot to maintain continuity with the MCU. And though Morbius' marketing continued to play up Toomes' presence in the film proper, anyone watching it for the first time surely figured out for themselves that Toomes' absence was leading to a credits-based cameo. And that's exactly what fans got. In the mid-credits scene, Toomes finds himself transported to Morbius' universe following the events of No Way Home, spawning in a prison cell where, due to there being no record of him in this universe, he's soon released. The post-credit scene then sees Toomes now inexplicably sporting his Vulture attire and approaching Morbius before suggesting they team up to take down Spider-Man.
Howard the Duck, Guardians of the Galaxy. At the end of Guardians of the Galaxy, the Collector, played by Benicio del Toro, is shown sitting in the ruins of his domain, where he's consoled by Cosmo, the telepathic Soviet space dog. Yes, that is a character in comics, and it's brilliant. Then an off-screen voice asks, "Why do you let him lick you like that for?" Which then reveals the speaker to be none other than Howard the bloody wet bread loving duck, voiced by Seth Green. Now, here's the thing, with this combination of decent visual representation and voiceover artists, this could have been a brilliant way to usher in a new film for the down-on-his-luck duck, but nothing was ever done with it, and it almost feels like trolling from Marvel. Yes, of course we could make a much better version of Howard the Duck than the one that George Lucas gave you, and yes, we could have used this scene to set up something for the next MCU crossover event, but instead, we'll do neither. It's still a great scene, but not one that you should have waited for in the grand scheme of things, right?
Skynet lives. Terminator Genisys. The laziest, most obvious sorts of post-credit scenes are those which set up a sequel by simply revealing that the villain we all thought was dead is in fact still alive. It's a trick as old as time, or at least cinema itself. And one of the most howlingly predictable from any major movie franchise is surely Terminator Genisys' lackluster last-minute resurrection gambit. The film seemingly ends with Sarah Connor, Kyle Reese, and Pops destroying the villainous T-3000 John Connor and obliterating the mainframe of Genisys, Cyberdyne's new operating system, which is basically a rebooted version of Skynet. But after the heroes ride off into the sunset, a mid-credit scene cuts back to the rubble of the Cyberdyne facility, where Genisys' system core has survived in an underground chamber, and the holographic projection of Skynet fleetingly flashes to life. Given that the filmmakers behind Terminator Genisys made it abundantly clear that the movie was the first entry into a planned new trilogy, fans were acutely aware that it wouldn't really be the end of, well, anything.
Powell looks to the stars. K-Pax. Dr. Mark Powell closes out our time with the film K-Pax by staring through his telescope, presumably in search for Prot's home planet. Now, after a few moments, he walks back to his home and the screen fades to black. It's a kind of a nothing scene, which only hammers home that Powell believes Kevin Spacey's character to be an alien. I mean, okay, well, we already kind of been asking ourselves the same thing thanks to the more subtle end to the film itself, so this scene feels like a do you get it stupid kind of moment. What's worse is that this does nothing to tie up the mystery itself, making this scene not only offensively obvious to the question it wants to ask, but it's stupid in its delivery as well. Plus, I'm not sure you're going to see much with that telescope, mater. I know it's nicer than the binoculars that Josh uses to peep and or creep, but it's not going to see much of the greater universe. However, one thing that we can all see is that this scene was a waste of time.
The Blip, Ant-Man and the Wasp. Ant-Man and the Wasp was one of two MCU movies sandwiched between Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, the other being Captain Marvel. And while the Ant-Man sequel was largely presented as a palate cleanser after Infinity War's bleak cliffhanger ending, it was still tasked with building a narrative bridge between the two Avengers movies. Even with Marvel Studios making it clear that Ant-Man and the Wasp was set before the events of Infinity War, most fans expected to see a credit scene which contextualized Scott Lang's absence from Infinity War, and what could be a more obvious way of doing this than showing Thanos' Blip from another perspective. In the scene, Hank, Hope, and Janet send Scott into the quantum realm to harvest quantum energy for Ghost. But when Scott attempts to return, it's revealed that Hank, Hope, and Janet have been turned to dust. Though absolutely expected, it was nevertheless a tantalizing setup for Endgame.
Thor and Jane kiss. Thor: The Dark World. I'm not gonna lie, I was, pretty fuming when I realised that I'd waited an entire credit sequence for what amounted to be a kiss between Jane Foster and Thor. I mean, my thinking was that this huge Marvel universe is just starting to wind up, so why is quite a key romance point being relegated to the post-credits? Surely this time would be better used to set up the next villain or get some world building in, not just a quick and, rather forced smooch that makes us just go, God, get on with it! And actually, this scene is even more infuriating when you think about it, because the frost monster that is shown running amok isn't addressed and is played for laughs. I tell you, if I ran into this after my weekly avocado shop, I wouldn't be best pleased, and neither would my then soiled trousers be. Thankfully, it was tidied up with the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. episode, but still, what a waste of time.
Groovy. Evil Dead 2013. Even though 2013's Evil Dead was technically set within the same continuity as the original Bruce Campbell starring Sam Raimi directed trilogy, it was for all intents and purposes a reboot/reimagining, with Campbell's Ash seemingly nowhere to be found. All the same, with Raimi staying on as producer and having considerable input on the end product, it was incredibly difficult to believe that Campbell wouldn't appear in the movie in some form. And what easier way to serve fans of the originals without taking anything away from the new movie than by giving Campbell a cheeky howdy-ho cameo in the credits. Rumours to this effect started doing the rounds in the months before Evil Dead's release, and so few few fans were shocked when a shadowy Campbell rocked up at the very end of the credits to quip just one word, groovy, before turning to the camera. Sure, it wasn't the role every Evil Dead fan was hoping for, namely crossing paths with the movie's protagonist Mia to set up another film starring them both. But a Raimi-produced Evil Dead movie without even a sliver of Bruce would have just felt wrong.
Beazle, movie 43. On paper, this should have been the greatest movie ever. A ton of celebrities, James Gunn at the helm, and a rather sizable emphasis on ad-libbed comedy, movie 43 had all the right ingredients. It's just a shame that the chef dumped in the soup because this was a nasty and stinky mess with little love thrown in. And even when the credits roll and you think that the pain is finally over, Beazle comes back to bite you one last time. For those not in the know, oh you lucky few, Beazle is an animated cat who tries to break up its owner and his girlfriend through all sorts of gross-out humour which lands with all the accuracy of a blindfolded person trying to hit a bullseye 10 light years away. The skit ends with Elizabeth Banks being stabbed to death by kids at a birthday party. Yep. If you want to cause yourself pain, feel free to sit through this, but if you have any interest in love and life, then please don't bother.
Tommy Oliver's teaser, Power Rangers 2017. As soon as the cast for 2017's big-budget Power Rangers reboot was announced, the series' passionate fans demanded to know why the Green Ranger Tommy Oliver hadn't been confirmed among the ensemble. Though Tommy didn't join the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers series until its 17th episode, he's still considered one of the OG Rangers. And as the only one missing from the reboot movie, his absence was most certainly conspicuous. And what could get fans more hyped for a sequel than introducing Tommy in some form? It was a slam dunk idea, and so Power Rangers mid-credit scene predictably returns to Angel Grove High, where the Rangers are informed that they'll be joined by another student for detention, Tommy Oliver. We then cut to Tommy's empty seat with a characteristic green jacket slung over the top, assuring fans that Tommy would appear in the planned sequel, even while their casting evidently hadn't yet been confirmed. Sadly, despite being well received by those who bothered to watch it, Power Rangers flopped at the box office, resulting in a planned blockbuster franchise quickly getting the axe.
Gunshot, American Gangster. Can this even be considered a scene? It's less than 10 seconds and just shows a shadowed figure walk up to the camera and then fire his gun, with the muzzle flash showing that the character is Frank Lucas. So what does this actually tell us? Well, that maybe Lucas has gone back to his criminal ways? Maybe, but it might actually be something much less interesting. You see, the shot was used in the trailer for the film and might just be them using the shot to justify its inclusion. Also, it might actually be a parody/homage shot to the iconic 1903 film The Great Train Robbery, in which an outlaw goes up and shoots the camera as well, so could very well just be pointless. But bonus points for the extra behind Frank, who recoils like he'd been the one who was actually shot, so maybe Frank was shooting through a portal, which would make this scene even more bizarre, but at the end, very little is actually clear.
Lara gets her guns, Tomb Raider 2018. 2018's Tomb Raider reboot is an especially egregious example of a neon signposted credits scene, considering that we got a pretty damn substantial taste of it in the movie's trailers, given that the film was marketed as an origin story for Lara Croft. When one of the trailers showed off a considerably more confident-looking braided hair Lara acquiring her two iconic H&K USP match pistols, many fans immediately guessed this would be an end credits scene. Though the scene technically appears before the main bulk of the credits have rolled, it doesn't play until after the movie's title has flashed on the screen, so it certainly counts. The brief scene shows Lara returning to London, where she picks up the two pistols from pawn shop owner Alan and his wife Pamela, setting up a sequel that could hit the ground running with a fully suited and booted Lara Croft. However, despite numerous attempts to nudge a second film into production, MGM failed to get cameras rolling in time and lost the rights to the Tomb Raider IP.
The Super Koopa Cousins, Super Mario Bros. Ouch, my childhood. This was probably the thought that went through my head when watching this movie, as my god, what an absolute bog of a flick. I don't remember because I have repressed it. Still though, the Super Mario Bros. Live action film was brazen enough to think that it would get a sequel, possibly as a result of a too big to fail mentality that it probably carried, and showcased Spike and Iggy talking about their adventures as the Super Koopa Cousins. It was a blatant blatant sequel bait, and a weird one at that, because why wouldn't you use this to introduce a villain or a new location or something, and it made it all the more painful when the film flew over the Cooper's nest with critical panning.
Piccolo survives Dragon Ball Evolution. Every so often, a movie is awful enough that a post-credit sequel bait tease feels more like a threat than a promise of exciting attractions to come. And that's certainly the case with the execrable live-action Dragon Ball adaptation, Dragon Ball Evolution. Taking the movie's quality out of the equation for just a second, it just never seemed plausible that Dragon Ball Evolution's primary antagonist, King Piccolo, would be defeated and killed off for good in a single film. For starters, Piccolo was Dragon Ball's original bad guy, and beyond that, his arc eventually saw him pull a face turn and join the hero's side. So why would any self-respecting Dragon Ball fan wipe him out in one fell swoop? Sure, no self-respecting Dragon Ball fan played any part in this movie being made, but all the same, nobody believed Piccolo was really gone when Goku took him out with a Kamehameha wave at the end. Lo and behold, the hilariously naff mid-credit scene then showed a woman tending to an unseen figure in bed, before they turned around to reveal that, drumroll please, there was a very much alive Piccolo. Mercifully, Dragon Ball Evolution was a dud in every way that a movie can be, so fans never had the proposed sequel foisted upon them.
The Dog King, Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest. It's a dog as the king of the cannibals. What more do you want? Okay, fine, I'll break it down a bit. I mean, we've waited 9 minutes for this, for a camera to pan up to a dog being shown as the new chief before we finally cut to black. Out of all the interesting plot points that we had going, including Jack Sparrow's travel to Davy Jones's locker, or what might happen to any of the other characters, we choose to end on this dog. Now, don't get me wrong, it is a top dog, but it's not what you'd expect or want from a film which probably should have been setting up the sequel that we all knew was coming. Still though, I guess we can all agree on one thing, in that it's a very nice hat he's got.
The corpse waits for question 5. Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves. The recently released Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves is a solidly fun time, though its penchant for broad, modestly amusing humor reached its apex with perhaps the most blatantly telegraphed credits gag in modern cinema history. Midway through the movie, Adrian and his band of heroes travel to a graveyard to question a fleet of dead warriors about the location of the precious Helm of Disjunction. The heroes cast a spell which allows them to resurrect the dead and ask them 5 questions. And after numerous interrogations prove hilariously fruitless, they finally get their answers from one of the reanimated rotters. However, the heroes flee the graveyard the moment they've got what they want, leaving the undead soldier waiting to be asked one remaining question before he can return to his eternal dirt nap. The scene then cuts away, but given that the movie's overall style and humor felt cut from the same cloth as the Marvel Cinematic Universe, in the mid-credits scene the corpse is still alive and kicking in the graveyard, desperately waiting to be asked the 5th and final question that'll put him back into the ground.